which is usually video. Unfortunately, as I was driving up last night with my kit, the rear passenger window of my car exploded. Still don't know why that happened. Anyway, so I had to go up on the train. So I haven't brought my video kit. Thankfully, Tim's filming, and we're also being filmed by the Hoovers. And then from the various microphones, you can see various podcasters are recording of this. So this will appear on numerous feeds over the coming weeks. So this is the first panel. We have Micheal Jayston, who I'm sure all of you know played the Valeyard back in 1986, and has since played him on Big Finish. I'm sure we'll hear about that. Toby Haydoke, comedian extraordinaire and Doctor Who extras expert. And John Davies, I understand you've recently taken over as editor of Celestial Spoiler Room. That's right. And you've written various Big Finish short clips and three Big Finish and a few bits here and there. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So it falls to me, as ever with the podcast room, to kind of try and make something out of a rather eclectic panel. I think last time there was one. It was what do all these three people have in common? And the only thing they had in common was that they'd been on Doctor Who under John Nathan Turner. Right. This seems an even more disparate panel. Maybe by the end we'll figure out what links everybody. So let's begin with you, Micheal. Is this your first time at Whooverville, I believe?
No, second.
Second time.
Yeah.
So what's brought you back?
I did a one-off as me.
Yeah.
In I forget where it was now. It was in a pub somewhere.
Right.
Being interviewed by Steve, wherever he is.
Yeah. He's around somewhere.
Steve Hardy.
Yeah. And so you're back. This is your first convention then here at Derby. How's it been so far? How's the day going?
It's very funny. I mean, the last time I came in, I think it was 2 years ago, and the last time I'd been in Derby, I saw Stanley Matthews play football.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, going back to John Nathan Turner, I mean, that time when I was doing Doctor Who with Colin Baker, it was a terrible time because there was Grade and Powell and 2 or 3 others didn't like Doctor Who at all, which is a bit silly. I mean, I don't particularly like Agatha Christie, but if I was an entrepreneur and a producer, I'd put Agatha Christie on, even though I didn't like it. But there were so many arguments. I couldn't say much because it wasn't in my gift to do that. But there were so many rows going on, especially towards the end. To Trial of the Time Lord, especially, there were rows going on all the time behind the scenes, which was not good for work. And some of the scripts got slightly childish at that time.
So you came to Doctor Who as it was finishing up for its first classic run.
And we thought it was going to finish for good.
You must have been aware of it for quite a long time before. And had you ever been asked before? And or was this the first time anybody had approached you to be on?
No, I did a radio with the second Doctor, Patrick Trout. Thank you. And I don't know whether you know, Patrick had 2 households in 2 different families living in various parts of the country, and he hadn't got divorced from either of the wives, so he had 2 children by one wife, and because he was doing this radio, I said, why are you doing this? He said, I need all the money I can get. Lovely man.
Yeah. So you ended up doing Trial of the Time Lord. Did you expect that 30 years later this role would still be with you?
Not for one moment. I knew Doctor Who was popular with people, but I did mine 30 years ago. It's unbelievable. Never thought it would get to that. But I've been in Chicago, Doctor Who, Los Angeles, you name it, Edinburgh, Glasgow, here, all over the place, and the Doctor Who fans are all like a lovely family.
Yeah.
I think if the Arabs got onto Doctor Who, there wouldn't be any wars.
But essentially, and this is a big spoiler if nobody's ever seen Trial of the Time Lord, I assume you all have. Yes? So
not necessarily. Who's seen Trial of the Time Lord?
Who's not seen it?
Not many.
So if we'll go with it anyway. So you essentially played the Doctor. You are one of a few people to officially
I know
play
I am.
Doctor
I'm
Who.
not touting for
Well, no,
I worked with Moffat on a thing called Press Gang when he was just starting out. I had a lovely part playing Colonel X with Julia Sawala and Dexter Fletcher. And I knew Moffat was going places because the writing was so good. But I am one of the doctors. They should never have written it in those first scripts, because it's what was John Hurt playing the last time. He was playing the evil side, so he was the Valeyard. The Valeyard's been mentioned quite a few times.
Yeah. And you've since played the Valeyard again. How has that been?
Big Finish Productions, yes, about 3 times. He's supposed to have died now, but I did that with Colin Baker and lovely Linda Bellingham. No, that was the one before, and then Linda died a few months later.
So no more, or if there's anything you
I
can't
don't
say?
think so,
Okay.
but of course, people come back from the dead in Doctor Who, don't they?
Yeah.
Time-wise.
Yeah. So you would love to carry on playing the role if the opportunity.
Oh yeah, it's lovely to do it again with Bonnie Langford.
Yeah.
One of them with Bonnie Langford, and I think didn't David Warner do it?
He did a few as well.
He did one, and Derek Jacobi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're lovely scripts.
Yeah. Good stuff. So if there's another script comes along, we'll be hearing you again.
Oh yeah.
Great. Good stuff. Let me move on to Toby. We've already heard Toby in here this morning.
I try not to repeat myself.
About his stand-up career. I mean, for me, I guess my introduction to you was probably whilst at my Doctor Who start.
Yeah.
And that thing keeps following you around, I guess, particularly at things like this.
Yeah, well, it's done me an awful lot of favours. I was a jobbing comic, earning a living perfectly happily, and I did a Doctor Who show. I did a show, my first Edinburgh show, and my friend said, do a show about what you know, so I did a show about Doctor Who. I think it was the year after it had just come back, so Doctor Who was hot property, and it was about to get hotter because David Tennant had just taken over, and timing is everything, and then suddenly. And I'd never been a Doctor Who fan who'd hung around with Doctor Who fans particularly. It was very much a solo pleasure. And this whole, and in the show, you know, I displayed that I have this memory for actors' names and things like that. And so this whole world opened up when they got me on DVDs. Because I'm an actor as well, I've done big finishes as well, quite a few now. And I now find myself in the unenviable position. It's terrible, because I do the DVD commentaries where I have to sit with people who are watching something they made 50 years ago. You know, go, do you remember this? And they go, not really. And then now people ask me about, they say, when you were doing that big finish, and you go, I can't remember that. You go, that was 9 months ago, and I've got the audacity to be asking somebody what they were doing in 1966. So,
but people can remember. You have been able to kind of draw memories out of people on the commentary.
Yeah. Well, the visual stimulation helps.
Yeah.
But you know, actors are good at telling stories, so even if they don't remember, they'll say something interesting.
I suppose doing a commentary on a big finish audio to kind of jog a memory wouldn't
quite work because you'd be having to listen.
Here's the audio.
It's always my pet hate on a commentary where people go, shh, we need to listen to this bit. You go, no, you don't. They've already seen it.
Yeah.
Anybody that's watching the commentary having not seen
Yeah.
the episodes already deserves what they get.
Yeah.
It's the same with spoilers. If you haven't seen Trial of a Time, I got into trouble. I got told I wrote Gareth Thomas's obituary for the Guardian. In which I mentioned what happens in the last episode of Blake 7. And I got a message on Facebook going, well, I haven't seen the last episode of Blake 7, you ruined that for me. It's like, how long do I have to wait? It was on in 1981. When are you going to get round to watching it?
Yeah. I mean, and in terms of like the DVD range, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, in terms of when it started, it was a new medium.
Yeah.
And yet, DVD is almost now
redundant.
dead.
Yeah.
And the Doctor Who has spanned the whole of that kind of life of the DVD medium. And you've been involved with that for quite a while. How have you kind of seen it change, and where do you see the future of it now that we're kind of perhaps moving away from physical?
I mean, I'm always the last with any piece of technology. In fact, we've just had work done on the house. We've decided we've got to throw lots of stuff away so it's not all cluttered up. I said, does that mean I have to throw some DVDs away? Stuff, but it's all on Netflix. You go, it's not the same.
No,
I'm certainly not throwing any Doctor Who ones away, but Juliet Bravo might have to go. I think Doctor Who benefited, the Doctor Who DVD range benefited from the fact that Doctor Who fans get everywhere, and the amount of stuff that went on those discs outweighed what was spent on them, just because it's Doctor Who and so everybody does it for love, not money, sort of thing.
No.
So we've got a sort of definitive history of Doctor Who on disc really, and some of those documentaries, like the Origins one about the beginning of the show that Richard Molesworth did, are they're broadcast quality better than what you get on telly. On telly, you get Shappy Corsandi saying what she remembered about Time Flight, which she's never seen. If they were doing a documentary about Doctor Who, whereas they're really good contributors and really good levels of research. So Doctor Who on DVD, I think we'll look back and go, how lucky we were. And we made sure when we were doing the commentaries when I came on board to try and not just get the first two people on the cast list, but to actually try and, across the commentaries and the documentaries, try and get as many people involved as possible. And then if we didn't get them, I've done them for my podcast. So we tried to do everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, talking of kind of people doing it for a lot of money, I'm on the Android Invasion DVD because at the time I was living in Oxford, I saw a tweet from Ed Stradling saying, we're filming Android Invasion stuff, and I'm like, well, I've been in Oxford for a while, I know where that village is, I've been several times, I've eaten in the pub, let's just drive down and ambush them in the pub.
Oh, brilliant.
So I turn up, and there's Nick Briggs, the camera guy, and Ed Stradling eating lunch, and I'm like, anything I can do? And they're like, well, we're going to film at the other place, it's kind of quite security conscious, we can't bring anybody else, we've done the paperwork. Come back later, we're interviewing people who still live in the village, all these years later, come back and watch. And so I come back, and then they're like, do you want to hold the boom? So basically, I stood there for half an hour in a pub, holding a boom mic over these people's heads, whilst they reminisced about their time in the village. And I get a little thanks credit on the DVD. But that's the kind of, like you say, the wealth of love for the show, and people, you were saying earlier in your panel, you're cheap. People do this for a lot less money than they perhaps should do.
Well, I've prospered because I do a podcast that I've spoken to Michael about, but we tried to hook up in Brighton, but you were busy.
Yeah.
Where I interview people that have been in Doctor Who about more than Doctor Who, about their whole careers. But these people get an email or a letter from somebody they've never met, doubtless never heard of, who hasn't got any money, who says, will you meet a stranger, he'll buy you lunch and talk to you about your career. And I've interviewed about 250 people.
Yeah.
And that is entirely done for you. And people say, gosh, has anyone been difficult? You go, nobody who's difficult agrees to meet a total stranger for free and give them content. Do you know what I mean? So I've had a delightful time doing it, but it's entirely fueled by people doing it because for no other reason, but then because they find it quite interesting.
But and in and of itself, it's just a fascinating archive of people's lives and stories beyond.
Well, that's how I pitch it to people now. I say it's essentially a spoken word testimony of it's the sort of thing I would want to watch on BBC Four. You could there's a plethora of chat shows where somebody's plugging their latest book. There's not one where you talk to people who've had amazing careers about their life as a working actor or actress and all the amazing people that they've worked with. So essentially, I've made something that is what I would like to watch, but nobody else has bothered to make. But unfortunately, I don't have any money, so I do it. It's for lunch.
Now I remember I'm somewhere behind. I've listened to a lot of them, and there were various points where you talked about this interview went wider than just Doctor Who. Is there kind of more material out there that will be released from some of those interviews, or is most of it now out there?
I try to keep this up. Jayston wants me to do a book, where maybe I talk about the other stuff. Well, I'm trying to edit one now at the moment because I tried to get them between half an hour and 50 minutes. And Darryl Blake, who directed one story, is 2.5 hours long. And I can't split that into episodes because I feel there should be some Doctor Who content in each episode. So it's a bit of a juggle. But
Darryl Blake, that's
Stones of Blood.
Right. Cool. Is my Doctor Who race already? Good. Let's move on to John. So you're now editing Sessutorium for Dwads. Toby was saying that earlier that his fandom was kind of quite solitary. I was aware of Dwads, but I've never been involved. Can you just tell us a little bit about the history of the organisation and how you kind of ended up in it?
Well, yeah, it's a good year to mention it because it's actually celebrating its 40th anniversary this year.
Wow.
So it started in 1976, and it's just organised, it's gatherings for people to get together, and if you subscribe, you actually get 12 issues of the magazine a year. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a blue plate for John Pertwee this year as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. How has it changed? Because obviously back in 1976, no internet. This was perhaps the only way for fans to meet up. How has it kind of changed as we've kind of gone into this era where there's just a plethora of stuff? How do you keep distinctive? What's the...
Well, when it started, it was basically just typewriter and someone with Tipex and stuff like that, and
Right.
you know, photos that they could actually put in from anywhere.
Yeah.
But as it's gone on, I mean, now every issue is purely digital.
Right.
I just gather the essays in from people and then basically send them over to a wonderful guy called Nick Hollands, who is the real star. If anyone subscribes to CT, the way he lays it out and everything basically makes anything that I can put in there 10 times better.
Right.
And I got involved in it because I was asked to contribute some essays.
Right.
And I've got a bit of a fast turnaround. If someone asks me to write something, it's usually written within a day or two.
Right.
So I sent it twice to you, and the editor at the time was Grant Bull, because I've not been involved with it all that period of time.
Right.
I only sort of became aware of it again, really myself, a couple of years ago. And so Grant sort of saw me as a reliable source to go to for
Yeah.
stuff to happen. And then Steve messaged me one day and said, "I'm thinking of stepping down.
Right.
Would you like me to put you forward to take over?" And it's like, yeah.
Okay.
And that's how I got the gig.
Right. And you've written fiction as well yourself?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be employed by Big Finish to write 3 stories of their original short trips books, all out of print now. So there you go. I
Quite
got
a lot on eBay, presumably.
one of them, and not because one of my stories is in it, is going for £55.
We Doctor Who will spend a lot of money on this.
But the other stories in there are really good, so if you want to spend £55, go for it. It's called Defining Patterns.
And you've also been involved with some of the War Doctor fiction.
Seasons of War.
Yeah.
Declan and May got together a really talented group of people to work on that, and I became really involved in some of the editing in that. A couple of people in the audience there have also been involved in it. Gentleman there called Simon Brett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that a T-shirt of the?
That is a T-shirt.
Fantastic.
It looks great. It looks great on an audio podcast.
Yeah. I believe Warren from Radio Fuscaro
Yes.
was involved in that. So another podcasting link.
Yeah.
There. Do you have any more projects that are similar lined up? Can you tell us about?
There's a couple of things coming up, because I don't know, has anyone heard of the You and Who books, edited by J.R. Southall? Yeah. There's one I'm putting together at the moment called You and Who's Company, and it's all to do with a person in your life that becomes to mean so much to you, not just like a lover, it could be a friend or anything, or if you're a fan of Miranda, it could be a vegetable person you created. But you came together because of your love of Doctor Who,
Yeah.
and it's that bond between that person and the show. That's what's coming out.
Fantastic.
There's a book called Hating to Love, which could be very interesting.
Yeah.
Once again, J.R. Southall's got together some writers to look at 52 of the worst Doctor Who stories ever done, and try to
Right.
appraise if they were, or if they were like a victim of circumstance.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Viewers of my podcast will know that I went into bat for Time in the Rani last year.
Yeah.
Did a whole podcast about how it's not.
Mm.
Toby's giving me a bit of a look.
You're a better man than I.
I unashamedly like Time in the Rani. I admire its ambition, and I know that there's lots wrong with it, but I just love watching it. I can't say the same for Twin Dilemma.
Is Twin Dilemma in that? Yes, it is.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Twin Dilemma often comes kind of towards the bottom of polls, isn't it?
Well, one of the ones I've written about might surprise a few people, and it surprised me when I thought of the idea, because it's one of my favourite episodes since the series came back. But JR sort of threw a line at me, and it made me completely reevaluate the story. So one of the ones I'm actually talking about is Turn Left.
Turn Left gets in the bottom 52.
But there's a reason why it's in there.
Right. Okay. Because
Yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong, but I think most people think Turn Left is a really good story, right? Hands up for it's. Yeah. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Hang
It'll
on.
be interesting to kind of
Two
see.
hands are up for that one.
Exactly.
Because it's one of my favourite episodes since it came back, but there is just something within it which throws it off kilter.
Right.
If you think, I was blissfully unaware of this until JR sent me a message saying, "Yeah, but what if you think about it this way?" I mean, Simon, you know JR. Yeah, the way he'll just throw something at you and it's like,
Right.
never thought of that.
Interesting.
And that's it. So I watched the episode again and I went, he's onto something there.
So you then elaborated on that, read about it. Okay. When can we read through
I think they've brought in a couple of essays coming in, but if you go to the Watching Books website, that's usually a place to find those.
Cool. I think we're. Has somebody got a schedule? I think we're drawing to a close on this one. So just if anybody has any questions they'd like to throw out to any of the panel.
Or if you want to lynch me for distance.
Yeah, I feel that. Go ahead.
We introduce ourselves like
If you would like, yeah.
I don't know. I'm from the Boombox podcast.
Yeah.
With all the podcasters in the room, they probably relate to this. Is that sometimes you'll think about talking about an episode, and you'll think, oh God, we talked about that 2 years ago. What happened in the say? But you always find something new to say, and that's one of the beautiful things about Doctor Who is there's always something new, even from the old. As long as how any of you reflect on that, whether you discover something new all the time when you talk to people about something you did years ago.
I mean, Michael, are you still finding new things to say about Trial of the Time Lord?
Well, next question. Not really, but the peculiar thing was the other day when they had that terrible tragedy at Camber Sands, which isn't all that far from where I live.
Yes.
It just reminded me, there were 6 people died, 2 of them couldn't swim. I don't know what they were doing in the sea, but it reminded me of doing, it was the only time I managed to get out of the studio.
Yeah.
We were studio bound and we went to the Potteries with dear Jeff Hughes, and I was doing my terrible maniacal laugh.
Yeah.
My daughter's now 30, she was 6 at the time, and she kept saying, can you do that laugh again, Daddy? And I was losing my voice. But I had to get buried when we got to the Camber Sands thing. Colin Baker had to be buried. They had to dig this great big thing down. And he caved in at one point, and they had to get him out very, very quickly. And but it was marvellous, because I then got rid of that stupid hat I was wearing on the Camber Sands, kept going behind sand dunes and laughing. And they did a lot of very good camera work on that. And the scripts were good for that particular episode.
Yes.
But a lot of people come up with different ideas of Doctor Who because they've got different takes on it. So it's always kind of alive. Yeah.
I always think he doesn't travel in time and space, he travels in genre, and so Doctor Who the Pertwee is a different genre of science fiction to the McCoy era or whatever. And I did a book with Rob Shearman called Running Through Corridors, where we spent a year watching Doctor Who. But because the internet is full of people being, you go to the internet to see what like-minded people think of the things that you mutually love, and you find it's just largely people being furious about it and saying what they don't like. So we decided to write this book where we watched every episode and tried to find the positive in it. And going in with that mindset, it meant, the whole premise of the thing was to reassess certain things, but actually you find because you geared yourself up to go, right, I want to see what's good in this, stuff that I'd previously not enjoyed, I like, but also I think you change as you age, and you might nip back to, I remember getting home one night and just for some reason decided to throw on Delta and the Bannerman, and it was terrible. And I stuck it on, and I had a very breezy hour and a half and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think because you revisit it, and because I've always said there's a Doctor Who story to suit you whatever mood you're in, because it's such a broad palette. And I think if you just go into it going, well, this is...
I did get, though, annoyed about Eccleston doing it in a northern accent, because he's a fine actor. And he said, I don't want to be posh like Tom Baker. So I sent Tom Baker a thing, posh, Liverpudlian. I mean, Tom's got and then Capaldi, who's another very, very fine actor, saying he was Scottish. I thought, no, Doctor Who is not. He's not Scottish or whatever it is. He's universal. It did annoy me when he said he was Scottish, because Moffat's Scottish. However.
Funny you mentioned Delta, the Bannerman, it's like the one show, this is a segue from that into what I was going to say. I'm actually doing a bit of a special thing this December for Celestial Toyland. It's going to be an annual. It's actually an annual based entirely about the Sylvester McCoy era. And I force people to place their own perspective and perceptions on the stories. Because I come from a generation whereby I loved the Sylvester McCoy era, but I was surrounded by people who didn't, and it's gone down. It's like it's one of those, it's marzipan and it's easy to bash because of that. And I think it's having a bit of a period of re-evaluation now, which is good. So I got all the writers involved because there's an essay on every story, and I even include Dimensions in Time.
Ooh.
And I forced them all to read it, watch it, and write about it in a positive way. Every single essay. And I did say I was going to announce this today, so I will. I'm very happy to announce that one of the contributors has written about Dragonfire, and it's a lady called Sophie Henderson, otherwise known as Sophie Aldred.
You mentioned Running Through Corridors, Toby. How many volumes are we at now?
Volume 2 is coming out after, I mean, I think people have been born and died since
Yes.
gestation. Volume 2, it's all written, you see, we did it over the
Yes.
course of a year,
Yeah.
but didn't edit it or copy-proof it
Yeah.
or cut out my terrible puns. And then Rob got ridiculously busy, but we've just put the finishing touches to Volume 2, which is out in November, and then hopefully the finishing touches to Volume 3 won't take the 6 years that the finishing touches to Volume 2 took.
Right.
So yeah.
So it's one per decade.
Yes. Well, because we're not sure how. Lars decides how he's going to divide it up. It was originally going to be 3 volumes, but I think we've written so much about some of the later stuff, it might end up being 4 volumes. But we wanted to end the 70s at the end of part 2 of The Haunts of Nymon. But he made us go through to part 4, unfortunately. So, you know, I'm a bit, you know.
You wanted to kind of have the actual,
Absolutely,
yes.
it's the 70s.
Yeah. Half the story and then
Yeah.
come back by the
And
next
then
book.
come
By the
back
next
6
book for the
years
rest.
later, yeah.
Of course. Fantastic. Brilliant.
Is this being recorded, by the way?
Yes, it is, yes.
I shouldn't have said that about Powley, and never work again.
I think it's fair. I mean, there was an event where I think it was David Tennant was asked what he thought of Capaldi doing Scottish acting because he wasn't allowed to, and Tennant basically said he was being lazy. So I think it's okay to kind of bandy around these.
But you see, Tennant being Scottish, I mean,
Yeah.
Tennant does a very good received pronunciation.
Yeah.
He could have played it Scottish.
Exactly. And I think he jokingly kind of went, well, I had to work hard because I was doing that accent. Any final questions before we just wrap up? Tim?
Well, I'll thank Toby while he's here for running through corridors, which I've scandalously forgotten to bring with me, having got it 50% signed earlier in the year, and I thought, I can get Toby to sign it today, and I've forgotten to bring it with me, but it's entertained me on many a long train journey.
Oh, good.
And were there any particular stories, because there's this running theme throughout this, it's a wonderfully conversational book,
Yeah.
and there's this running theme of, we must be positive, we must be positive. Was there any kind of against the wall moments where it was, how can I be positive about this?
Rob gives up on episode 5 of The Time Monster.
Ah.
He just goes,
That's
I
an
like
interesting-
Joe's hair, over to you.
You guys are partnering my rewatch. I've been rewatching the whole lot since 2013.
Yeah.
With every so often I'll rewatch them and I'll have a gap of a few months and then I'll go back to rewatching them. And I'm now ahead of you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's
So
Rob's
I'm going
fault.
to be having to read your book en masse about December to catch up.
Right, okay. Apologies. But it's quite fun. But he's very good, you see. He's very good at even. I think he lies sometimes. Even he's very good at spinning a flight of
Well,
fancy.
I
about
like
something.
the fact that you approach it from different angles, because
Yeah.
you've got the acting angle, and so you look at all the performances and what people are doing with characters, and him as a writer looks at it and says, oh, how's someone written this story? How have they solved the problems of
Yeah.
plotting this? And so it works very
We
well.
just
that way.
because we hit it off when we met, and he was doing something in Liverpool, and he dropped me a message saying, I'm not doing anything to the evening. You around? I said, well, I'll just come over to Liverpool. I'm in Manchester. We went to the pub and went through the Pertwee era, saying what we liked about his story, and it was just a chat. And he got this idea and said, well, why don't we do it as a thing? Because we both like the same sort of things and bounce off. I actually sometimes think it would be better if we had differing opinions on more things than we do, because I think it gets more interesting when he's saying something's not very good and I have a go at it, or vice versa.
I just admire how much you can say about each one, because I'm watching each one and then trying to review them for my podcast immediately having seen the episode. And my average review of an episode is about 2 to 4 minutes of me blabbling on about what I thought about it, and then which all ends with, and now onwards to episode 2.
Well, we talk rubbish for a living. It's quite easy
Yeah,
to...
but it's brilliantly meticulous and good debates and stuff going on.
Yeah, I don't quite know how he did it. I don't think I'd do it again. It's one of
Well,
those things you look back on and go, did I really spend a year watching every episode of
it
Doctor
didn't
Who?
even coincide with a gap year, did it? Because running the Wife in Space project was done throughout the gap year.
Yeah. Yeah.
which I'm also reading at the moment.
That's great.
That is brilliant.
Fantastic. Well, I think I've some people for the next panel, so let's just wrap that up with, let's thank Michael, Toby and John for their time. I'm expecting another podcaster to relieve me at this point.